Florida State beat Miami 31-28. This was a big win for the Seminoles, and I'm here to give my thoughts and, more importantly, try to break down a little bit of what happened in the game. We will be having a full film breakdown later this week where both Coach Adam Brown and Trey Rowland join me, and we watch through the game and talk about the major points. But I kind of wanted to give my insights after I rewatch this game real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and hop to the Chalk Talk. So I thought the first half, let's start on offense. I thought the first half was an excellently called game by by Coach Norvell. And to kind of break down a little bit of what he did, this was kind of the main idea. So let me make sure I've got everything. So what he did a lot was he gave Miami these looks of pulling. Let's do it over here. He would pull this tackle and this tight end, and he wanted to run the counter that has been so associated with this team. It's where a lot of the big runs by Ward and Corbin have come through. Getting these linebackers flowing and moving. Miami had one linebacker in particular. I'm not going to name names, but he struggled all year to kind of reach on these counter runs. And they got him a few times on this, but what really was the saving grace for Miami is no one really is better than Miami at getting initial penetration by these linemen. So Miami likes to play what's called a single gap defense. So this is going to be weird because I've got 4-3 lettering here, but they like to just stunt through gaps. They're always upfield, always fast. They were able to shut down a little bit of the counter game early, but Norvell had several counters to the counter that really opened things up for the offense. So they did a lot of the tossed read where they would do the counter and get guys out here, but they would not block this end. And you probably saw this. It works a lot like the speed option that you might see more option-based teams run, but basically you're reading this guy. If this end goes outside, you're going to keep it, which Jordan Travis did several times and got a fair amount of yards doing it. If he stays inside, you pitch it. And again, this was probably one of the most successful plays in the first half for the Seminoles. It's just a beautifully designed play. It gets these linebackers moving. So if you see that these linebackers are the safety, so what they started doing is they were one high for a lot of the game. They'd cheat this guy in here. They were consistently having 7 men in the box. If you see that these guys are crashing out because of this pitch play, that's when you go back to the counter and try to hit this A or B gap. Try to hit them inside. And then if you see that the whole defense starts flowing, what they started doing was they would pull these linemen like they were running counter, but then hit them on screens or like running back screen once or twice. They got a couple big chunk plays out of that. So in general, that was the game plan, and it was even the game plan in the second half. So they didn't change much offensively between the first and second half. Miami was a little bit better at shutting it down. I think they made a few adjustments, especially with their linebackers, to try to take out the counter and therefore take out the kind of base play of that stack. So on defense, where I really want to spend a lot of time talking about, defense, you saw a lot of this. In the first half, Miami had almost nothing going for them. So the only thing Miami had going in the first half offensively, mostly because of picks and fumbles, was they would spread Florida State out wide, and you could see that this Mike linebacker is like an instrumental guy in this defense because he's both has a gap fulfillment, and he is responsible for some of the passing game. So a lot of RPOs and stuff are based off this. Miami wasn't even running RPOs a lot of the time. They were just handing the ball off, and this guy was straight turning this way. So Fuller basically made the bet that these 4 guys would beat Miami's 4 guys consistently. And I think they did for the most part. So they kind of kept them wrapped up. But they were able to get some yardage off this in the first half. You could see that Florida State really didn't respect Miami's front 5, and that was probably a fair assumption. Miami, even by the end of the game, didn't get a lot going. So once in the second half, what Miami started figuring out, and I think this is a really great adjustment by them, they would bring this tight end in, forcing this guy in the box here. And so Florida State always runs cover 4 or some variation of cover 4. So you got these guys all kind of dropping. And the coverage rules for the linebackers is they're waiting for an undercall. Oops, I shouldn't have drawn that guy, but you get cover 4. So they're waiting for an undercall. So if this guy runs under, the mic is going to call to the will to pick him up. But the will is also responsible for this running back. And there were a couple of big plays in the second half where Amari Gaynor was the will here, and you can see that he was getting an undercall, or he had his eyes towards number 3 over here, and then they would leak this running back out a little bit late, and he would be late to adjust. So that big touchdown run, or that big touchdown reception, came off a similar play to this. There was a big play early in the second half that got them down. Also, I believe Miami won the turnover battle in the second half. So that was that fumble that got them the good field position at the beginning. The other thing that was different for Miami in the second half, and why they were able to get some stuff going, was Charleston Rambo just made some catches, man, and Tyler Van Dyke made some throws. And at a certain point, you have to tip your hat and say that was an NFL level wide receiver catching an NFL level thrown football. And I thought what you got out of Kevin Knowles, out of Jarvis Brownlee, and out of Amari Cooper was indicative of kind of the future of this program. Those are all not highly rated recruits that very quickly have been turned around by the staff to be functional members of this team. And so I think that's a positive that you can look forward to in the future. The secondary I thought played extremely well. Jermaine Johnson, of course, is a stud. Keir Thomas is a stud. But you can't forget that a lot of times these corners were being put in one-on-one coverage, and for the most part, they performed really solidly. And you got to give them credit, as well as the guys up front that obviously deserve a mountain's worth of credit. So let's check the conversation that's going on. So Brownlee got hurt, and Rambo did start killing us. He did catch 1 or 2 over Brownlee, but they were well-defended passes. And at a certain point, the offense is expected to win. So when you're able to shut them down, that's a big thing. So the parchment throw, to go back to the offense, there was one. So FSU won 2 one-on-ones on offense, and the second one was the biggest, and it was they got a wheel route on a safety by I'm blanking on his name, 22. Sorry guys, it's late. I've had a crazy night. But a wheel route on the safety in that last drive that got like a big 30-yard completion, and then FSU had a one route by Andrew Parchment, and he kind of stopped. It was a good throw by Jordan Travis. If there's still Jordan Travis haters out there, he's not going to win the Heisman, but the kid puts his heart out on the field, and he gives you something. Like the offense had a pulse today. So yeah, he's not going to make every throw, but he's also giving you a running threat that a lot of people won't give you. So there is some trade-off there, but I thought if you can get him to throw the ball as well as he threw it today, this team wins a lot more football games. So they did move the pocket for him a few times. That was big. He's really good on the move. I mean, I don't know what you can say. The kid played with heart. He made a lot of good throws. I thought Fuller's game plan was excellent. Every once in a while, he'll have one of these games, especially against these spread offenses. He seems to be pretty solid in his game plan. So he's really good at shutting down these teams that are looking for space. So what Miami does is they try to spread you out and try to read the field, and he purposefully. This is so you guys might want to say, okay, Fuller's nothing without this defensive line, but they purposefully stacked the defensive line, knowing that it helps to have one area stacked, which means that you can just focus on the other, right? By stacking this defensive line, it allows you to make life easier on this linebacker because now he doesn't have to necessarily worry about being a two-way run fit and pass player. So, yes, Douglas. Thanks, AB. AB's in the chat. So hopefully he can answer some questions that I'm missing because he watched it live and I'm a little distracted by doing all of this at once. So so this was a really big game for the Seminoles. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm just I'm just ranting. This is pretty exciting. So I'm going to go into some of the stats. So this page is called Game on Paper. It's free for everybody. Let me see if I can't resize this so you guys can kind of get a view of what I'm looking at. But we can go through some of the stats now that I talked about what each team's game plan was. Sorry if this is a little jumpy. Yeah, here we go. So it has a lot of the advanced analytics that I really like. So Florida State outgained them 479 to 360 yards, 6.4 yards per play. That's a really solid yards per play metric. Yeah, this is what I think was the biggest thing for this game. You won the turnover battle and the penalty battle, and you didn't lose the special teams battle. So the special teams were about even. You're able to hold par on that. But you did come through with some big turnovers. Oh, that reminds me, there was something that I did not talk about here that I thought was really big. In that first half, and this is one of the reasons why I think Fuller deserves some credit. In that first half, Miami, I kind of showed it in my preview, but Miami likes to do, they like to run a lot of these glance routes. And Florida State's safeties did a really good job of coming up and being really aggressive. So that interception by Jamie Robinson happened on a play that looked just like this. It was an RPO glance, I believe, and Jamie Robinson came up and made that interception because he was being really aggressive, playing to their tendencies. And sometimes when you do that, you can leave yourself vulnerable to big plays. But here, it came out big. Jamie Robinson laid a big hit. There was another one where Akeem Dent came and made a big hit. There were several first downs that you took away from them because these safeties were just doing a really good job of being aggressive and taking away that little middle inside of the field. So if people ask you what Fuller did and why he deserves some praise for this game, I think the two things are mainly he took away the emphasis on the box and trusted his defensive line to win, which seems like an obvious thing to do, but it is something that he did. But secondly, he had these safeties doing a really good job of playing aggressively and playing to Miami's tendencies to hit that glance route. So, yeah, you got to be excited about these DBs. Jermaine Johnson is obviously a total stud. Miami had twice as many penalty yards as rushing yards. Yeah, so when you're looking at things you can credit this coaching staff with, it's limiting penalties, limiting mistakes. You can see that Miami, even in Manny Diaz's however many years he's been there, I think it's like his third year, but they still haven't cleaned up those penalty issues. So that was a big thing, is winning the penalty battle, winning the mistake battle. I said it in the preview that if Florida State wants to win this game, they've got to win the turnover battle. They've got to be a more level-headed team, and the fact that the fact that they played a lot more level-headed than Miami, despite being significantly younger, is a good indication of the up and coming cultural base that this team is getting built on. Yeah, I think you saw less and less reps by Helton and Wilson. I saw Jordan Young getting a few reps, and there's even a jump ball that he dropped, but it was a hard one. The linebackers played a really solid game. Other than what I discussed earlier, where there were a few times where Amari Gaynor was getting his eyes in the wrong place in those trips formations, and the running back was leaking out. Other than that, I thought the linebackers did a really good job. We were in dime a lot, but Miami tends to keep a tight end in the game, which means that you're going to be in nickel. So they were in nickel for most of the game. So you either saw Lundy and Gaynor in there, or Gaynor and Deloach, or whatever mix and match of that. So Dawn says that Shannon has been running the defense since halftime of the Wake game. That's possible. I doubt it. This defense still has a lot of Adam Fuller flair to it. I don't think Shannon's known for as much cover 4 as Adam Fuller runs, and this team is running a ton of cover 4. It's possible. So I would have to go back and watch more of Randy Shannon's film, but I kind of doubt that. I do think Fuller deserves some credit. He definitely still has flaws, and it depends on what he's bringing you in the recruiting game. But I think what I see in Fuller is that, and what Norvell sees in Fuller, is the guy can make a game plan. The on the field coaching and the coaching of fundamentals is still up to be decided, and the recruiting is still up to be decided. But the guy knows his X's and O's, and he knows where to put defenders to take away certain tendencies of defenses. And so that's his biggest pro, but that doesn't necessarily mean that like never fire Fuller. He's the perfect coach. So Hunter Trap tweeted JJ smashing the rock. Yeah, I didn't get to see the game live, so I don't know how the environment was, but it looked pretty rowdy on television. So I hope it was exciting, and I hope that the recruits there that got a good experience of what Doak Campbell can be like. I wish we had receivers. Yeah, so do I. And so that could be a big thing that a couple of these potential recruits bring. Norvell is a genius. He certainly looked like one in the first half. The second half, they shut down a lot of what he wanted to do. So, yeah, the team looks solid. The team is getting more and more solid every week. You can't do much about some of the talent disparity that you're missing out on outside of the defensive line, but yeah. Let's see. Is there anything special about our effort against the run? It's been pretty solid all year, but Knighton is no slouch, and this was impressive. So I think the linebackers are getting better. They're understanding more and more about which gap they need and how that fits into coverage. So the hardest part about being a linebacker is you're both a secondary player and a box player. So they're getting better in that, and that's huge. I think that Miami's offensive line just isn't very good. They don't have a good running game. Knighton is really good as a running back, but he's not one of those running backs that's going to be especially special against with a poor offensive line. He needs space, and so they do a good job of getting him out in space in the passing game. But I think that Florida State did a great job with the run. However, that's not exactly Miami's strength. So the stat website is gameonpaper.com. I'm sorry I couldn't show it super well. I can see if I can go back to it. So you can kind of see a little bit of it, but because the screen is wider than 1920 by 1080, it's kind of cutting off a lot of it. So they've got a lot of good stuff like success rate, and it's free to use. Some of the stats will be a little bit funky. Like one time I quoted this site and the turnover numbers were wrong, but in general does a really good job. So props to Saeem who came up with this website. It's really a cool thing to use. So special teams, Kevin Coleman. Yeah, so those are two. Kevin Coleman would be awesome to have. Travis Hunter would be awesome to have. Anybody that could play wide receiver for this team would be a game changer. So UM's quarterback is really special. Just a couple years ago, this would have had prime time. Yeah, but it's not a couple years ago. So we got to keep stepping forward. It's huge that we beat Miami. We're clearly we seem to be a program on the up. Miami and Florida both seem to be going down right now. Although this Miami team is no slouch. They have a lot of talent on that roster. Tyler Van Dyke has the appearance of a quarterback that has a lot of potential and someone that will be a concern moving forward if they're able to kind of build an offense around him. Yeah, the linebackers definitely benefit from the defensive line, and they also benefit from man coverage, or from the secondary looking better. So the better the secondary looks, the better the linebackers look because they don't have to be put out in as much space. The better the defensive line. It's a chain, right? Like as the better each section looks, the easier it makes for everybody else. Yeah, the special teams does need to be improved. Luckily, you didn't totally get shot in the foot here. You actually outpunted them. I don't know if they returned a kickoff, but you did better on kickoffs, and the only reason that you're losing the EPA for special teams was the missed field goals, which is huge. So Zachary Whitfield, hey, I am new to the channel. What all FSU stuff you talk about? So unfortunately, it is just me today, but I usually have a coach on with me. We like to break down this stuff with X's and O's. We like to go to the chalkboard. We like to watch a film. So we're not trying to give fluff and talk about the intangibles. We're trying to talk about what literally happened on the field. I do basketball too, so I'm going to do the X's and O's of the basketball as soon as kind of football's over and the basketball gets in full swing. But so why don't we roll out Jordan Travis more? So that's a really good question. I think it's one where the biggest problem with rolling Jordan Travis out, so I'm going to go back here to the chalkboard. When you roll Jordan Travis out, what it keeps you from doing is it does two things. So it does get him out in space where he's more comfortable, but it also takes away your ability to do play action, which sucks up these linebackers, and it cuts the field in half. So while he does look comfortable in space, and I do agree that they should go more to it, it's not an obvious choice because there's pros and cons to everything in this game, right? If it was the obvious choice to always roll him out, then this wouldn't be a conversation we're having. But there are pros and cons to shutting off half the field and not forcing these linebackers to respect the running game. But that's a really good question. I do think that's a missed opportunity. So I think we probably bring in a transfer quarterback for depth purposes, but the JT is the guy moving forward. Yeah, potentially. You definitely need more options for this quarterback room. It never hurts to have competition, but I've kind of been saying it for a while. I think Jordan Travis is potentially a top 30 and top 30, 40 quarterback in college football, just with what he brings you with his legs and being an okay thrower. Now, if he was a more consistent thrower, then he would be a Heisman candidate. But he's not, and so he's, I think, a top 30, 40 guy. So thanks for subscribing, Zachary Whitfield. Anybody else here for the first time, make sure to like and subscribe and check out our other stuff if you want a good feel of kind of what we do around here. So Gibson was finishing blocks tonight. B-ball too. Hell yeah. This. So do you like the linebackers played better this game? Yes, I do think the linebackers played better, especially against a team that potentially would tax them pretty hard. But I think Fuller kind of was able to, well, not Fuller. I think the defensive line was able to hide a lot of the inadequacies tonight. They were able to win up front, which made their lives a lot easier. Still, I think those 2 or 3 mistakes by Amari Gaynor potentially gave a touchdown or two away, which, not hating on the kid, he's incredibly talented. Those are just little things that you see and fix as time goes on. He's is it a foregone conclusion that the NFL probably tries to convert Travis into a wide receiver or running back? Potentially. You see that more and more. These running quarterbacks are being valued in the NFL. Jalen Hurts is getting a lot of run. So he might have a shot, but I would be curious to see what he looks like when he's got wide receivers that consistently win one-on-one matchups. So how much better does an okay thrower look with an average wide receiver room? Does he go from a C to a B? Wide receivers are the most underrated part of an offense, and I think that has to do with the fact that you don't see them do their work on film, like on the broadcast angles. So the broadcast angles kind of cut off where the wide receivers run their routes, but a good route running wide receiver can make life just a million times easier. One thing that Norvell does that I think isn't really well suited for this team, I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, is you have to have some way to beat man coverage. So when teams are playing you in man coverage, it means that they get to put basically seven men in the box and say, you're not going to run the football, right? So every coach has to have their way of winning man coverage. So if you look at Lashley, Miami's offensive coordinator, what he does is a lot of these glance routes, and this is kind of, the more modern spread approach is just try to get your guys in these little easy slants, try to win underneath. What Norvell does, and it's not right or wrong, is he tries to win these deep one-on-ones. So you saw it once or twice with Pokey Wilson. There was one throw deep where the cornerback was just able to ride him out into the sideline, and you see this pretty often with this team. And so when I say that our wide receiver room is lacking, I see stuff like this all the time, where he has a one-on-one on the outside, which as an offensive coordinator is something that you want to get to. Like if you're forcing the defense to play man coverage, it means that you're in good shape. You've got the defense where you want them, but you need to be able to win these. And if it's either his stem isn't good enough or he's just not physical enough, but you're not winning those one-on-one matchups with the wide receivers, and there's nothing really you can do at that point. Because if you allow a defense to just man up on you, it's just going to make life so much harder. So I think that's a big handicap for our offense right now, is you just don't have that one person you can trust out there. So we need some hogs. So why do I have a circular ad framed behind my wall? I don't know what you're talking about. Am I crazy? Do we keep running this Jordan Travis offense until we have a better OL and wide receiver room to run the real Norvell offense? Seems like we don't have an alternative. Yeah, I think right now the dual threat nature of Jordan Travis is really useful and something that gives you a competent offense with the holes that you have. It's yet to be seen if we have enough potential on this offensive line to have someone 2 or 3 years from the future. This staff has given at least me hope that they're good at evaluating players, but unfortunately, offensive line and defensive line are kids that take a few years to process before they're ready to go into a game, unlike defensive back. A great quarterback would be nice. A quarterback that just can throw dimes everywhere would be nice, and might make up for a lot of your wide receiver lack of talent. But I don't know. That's a hard question to answer, right? Like potentially he's your best option until you get 1 or 2 wide receivers that can win those one-on-one matchups, and then at that point, it might be worth getting a quarterback that wins those, right? It was nice for Miami to have Tyler Van Dyke hit those dimes down the sideline. It makes your life a lot easier as a coach when you can win one-on-one matchups. 2 O-line transfers. That's exciting. Is Norvell trying to duplicate the offense he had at Memphis, or is that where he's trying to get to? His offense now does not look like what he ran at Memphis. It looks a little bit like what he was running at Arizona State when he had a running quarterback. But Brady White would be unable to. He wouldn't be the right fit to run a lot of those pitches that I was talking about earlier, or the read options that I defined. They ran a lot more RPO stuff that we don't see very much. I didn't see a single RPO that Florida State ran today. So whoever keeps telling me that RPOs, we run too many of them, I don't think knows what an RPO is. But we might have had 1 or 2 of those like triple option reads where there was a screen and Jordan Travis was throwing it out there, but that's not necessarily an RPO. It's kind of more of a triple option look. So no, his offense here doesn't look anything like it does at Memphis. You assume that when he had the guys he wanted at Memphis, his offense looked way more like how he wants it. But one of the great things about Norvell is he's very flexible. So one of those years when Brady White was young, he wasn't super serviceable as a quarterback, and you saw them do just a ton of Wildcat stuff and be very flexible with that. So that's one of the cool things about his offenses is 1 year he'll be top in the country and throwing the ball, and 1 year he'll be top in the country of running the ball. So he's shown some flexibility, but I'm sure he wants a quarterback back there that can throw the ball. Otherwise, you wouldn't have all of his recruits be essentially throwing quarterbacks. I know Chuba was a dual threat, but still. Toss read was huge. I agree. I think he built the whole thing off the toss read. I talked about that earlier, so that was really cool. So I think that I'm going in circles at this point. I wish I had A, B here. Some key takeaways, some key conclusions I want to talk about was that first half, having everything built. He had 4 or 5 plays built off of one offensive line pattern, and he was able to manipulate the linebackers based off that. That was one of the reasons you're able to move the ball in the first half. In the second half, you weren't, because Miami was winning the battle up front and kind of blowing those plays up before they could get started. On defense, I thought you had a great game plan. You trusted your defensive line to win, and they did. Your secondary looked a lot better. I thought Brownlee, Kevin Knowles, and Marion Cooper just looked really great for young players, and there's a bright future there for those 3 guys. And I think Miami had a good game plan, good adjustment in the second half, and Florida State played the cleaner game, less turnovers, less penalties, and that's what ultimately won the game. And so proud of these kids. I think you should be too. This is an exciting game. Hopefully it was big for recruiting, and thanks for joining me, and go Noles.